Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and KCUR. It's Tuesday, October 14th, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. The Chiefs impressively won their showdown with the Detroit Lions on Sunday and may have found a formula that could be the key to success for the rest of the season.
The great thing about this offense is it can come from everywhere. Obviously, Hollywood, Tyquan's had big games, Xavier's had big games, Travis, obviously, other guys, and then now we're getting Rashee back. And so it's all about building depth. I think that Veach has done a great job with that. And those guys love each other. That receiving room, they love each other, and they want each other to do good. And so when you have that mindset as a whole room, you can have a lot of success.
Star columnist Sam McDowell and beat writer Pete Sweeney are here to share their thoughts on the Chiefs, including Patrick Mahomes' MVP-worthy performance, a solid game by a surprise starter, a little dust-up during the handshake time, and a look ahead to Sunday's home game against the Las Vegas Raiders. After a break, Sam will stick around to discuss the latest in stadium news for the Chiefs and Royals. There have been some developments for the future homes of the Kansas City teams. Hello, Sam.
How's it going, Blair?
Pete, how you doing?
I'm well.
So, Pete, it's all fixed, right?
Well, this year has been interesting, and I think it's sort of a microcosm of what the NFL is on a year-by-year basis. If you really go through the Chiefs season, and especially when the fan base is riding every game as maybe even a playoff game or a Super Bowl. I mean, after they were 0-2, everything was so grim. And then I think there were flashes of hope where they played well against the Giants. It really took care of a beat-up Ravens team, and then everyone was down again. And now you wake up after they really handled the Detroit Lions. I mean, from wire to wire, maybe aside from when the Lions drew within 3 in the third quarter, there was a little bit moment there. But for the most part, wire to wire, they had control of this game, it seemed. And now, I tweeted this out, you wake up and everyone is back on board. It seems to be fun again. And even, and Sam and I like to look at this sometimes, but the Las Vegas odds, Patrick Mahomes is the standalone MVP favorite. Especially after Josh Allen's Monday night. And then the Chiefs are co-Super Bowl favorites with the Buffalo Bills. And so after 6 weeks, even at 3-3, it seems like the Chiefs, from a standpoint of what everyone's thinking, are the top tier of the league.
The Chiefs had 9 possessions in the game, 2 kneel downs, one at the end of the first half and the end of the game. So in 7 possessions, 4 touchdowns, a field goal, 1 punt, and they turned it over on downs on the 4th and 1 that didn't work out. But that was as efficient an offensive performance, I think, as we've seen this year from the Chiefs.
I actually thought they were even more efficient the week before in Jacksonville. I mean, I sure you remember, like, my game column after that game was we could see this coming. And so I wasn't surprised by what they did against the Lions just for that reason. Like, when you include those drives you mentioned, Blair, and backtrack to Jacksonville, 13 of their last 16 drives have reached the opponent's territory. Like, they're consistently moving the ball on offense. It's not, one big play to Tyquan Thornton or something that's like inflating their numbers. So, a week ago in Jacksonville, they had their most yards per play in a game in 4 years. They've scored 95 points in 3 games for the first time in 3 years. They've reached 6 yards per play in back-to-back games for the first time in 2 years. Like, this is consistent offensive performance. And I think if nothing else, like, whatever you think of what the Chiefs are right now, you have to acknowledge that their ceiling is different than what we've seen over the last 2 years. And it sounds bizarre to say because last year they went 15-2, but I don't think any of us, we talked frequently about that, was not really a 15-2 team. This team looks like a very capable team to where I thought last year's looked like it was hanging on by a thread a lot.
A team with 3 losses already, 1 more loss than last year, seemingly better offensively.
I think this year's team beats last year's team. And you're right, Blair. It's weird to say because of the record doesn't show that. But, they were historically good on one possessions last year, including the playoffs. They were 12-0 on one possession games. This year, they're 0-3. Like, it shows, I think, not just, to me, that's not just commentary on this year. It's commentary on the fluky nature of the way they navigated last year's schedule. And that stuff tends to even out. And I just think going forward, this team has a lot more potential than what I saw from last year.
Sam, should we fire up Madden and build the teams and just kind of see who wait.
I'll give you one more stat, Sam, to add on to your collection here. Since halftime of the New York Giants game, the Chiefs have reached the red zone. That's the 20 yards line toward the goal line 19 times, and they've scored touchdowns on 14 of them. That's remarkable. And some of that is the reason for some of that is the column that you wrote, the subject of the column you wrote after the game, and that is Andy Reid taking more risks on fourth down. That's just a new element for him, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, Pete asked him after, what was it, week 2, and he said, no, nothing's changed. I mean, and so it prompted me after the game to like literally look at like he's never done what he did in this Lions game, which is 4th and at least 3 inside the 30-yard line. They're inside the 10. They're at the 6-yard line there on the first drive, but 4th and 3 plus inside the 30 in the Patrick Mahomes era. He's never left the offense on the field. 86 times, 86 field goal tries. And he leaves the offense on the field at that moment. And I thought it sparked the entire game. And to be clear, like I would commend that decision even if they had missed it. Because you guys know, I mean, you sit next to me in the press box. Even the one they missed, I still said that was a good decision. Didn't work out, but still the right process to get there. And what I wonder is because Andy Reid has sort of hinted that this has been a product of what the opposition does. It's like, well, if you think Baltimore going for it's a good thing, if you think the Eagles going for it's a good thing, if you think the Lions going for it is a good thing to where you have to match, it shouldn't matter what the opponent's doing. To me, it's how your own team is built. And right now, their offense is better than their defense. That's the unit you want on the field dictating the outcome of the game.
Andy Reid's a man of routine, and I think he wants to, as best, stick to routine even on a year-by-year basis. But he does evaluate everything after each year, and sometimes there are little tweaks. I mean, it could be something as unimportant as a time they leave for a road game. Maybe it'll be better if they get a little more, make little adjustments like that. I tend to think, and this is what I was getting at in week 2, that he met with Mike Frazier, who is the statistical analysis coordinator, and maybe there is an element of adjusting to this team with it. But I think there's been a change in what they call the Chiefs book, which is whether on a certain situation you go for it or you stay. Sam, to his credit, even when I wasn't here at the start, I could tell he's been clamoring for this type of change for years. And it seems like they have finally made it.
It was really bizarre to write about 4th downs in like a positive way. The amount of times that we've criticized Andy Reid for not choosing to leave the best player on the planet on the field and instead, leaving it to his defense or something of that sort. I mean, it's been too many times to count. So I think that's about the first time I've written a column commending him for going for a 4th down.
Chiefs committed 0 penalties in the game. That first time since, I think, 2022, after committing 13 at Jacksonville the previous week. Obviously a point of emphasis. I like something Andy Reid said on Monday that sometimes it's just the crew, the officiating crew. You get one that's not flag happy, and for whatever reason, credit the Chiefs for their disciplined play on Sunday. But also, I thought noteworthy in the game, we find out on Sunday that rookie left tackle Josh Simmons not available for the Chiefs for personal reasons. Pete, you talked to his replacement, Jaylon Moore, after the game. There was quite a story there with Jaylon Moore.
Yeah, this was one of the better stories that came out of the game. I wrote about it for the paper and the site. Jaylon Moore finds out that he is going to be the guy, and you would think, oh, is this an NFL player? Maybe in his mansion/mini mansion. No, he was in a small hospital room with a bad sleeping situation for this offensive line type body. His wife had given birth overnight to a healthy baby girl, and again, sleepy eyes, but he gets the call and says, it's probable you're going to start today. And he ended up showing up. This has been someone, if you go back to his San Francisco 49ers days, has been waiting for a starting opportunity for literally years. He actually thought this was the place he was going to get it. This was because he signed before Josh Simmons was drafted. Of course, Simmons started the first 5 games for the Chiefs, but he gets the 6th start, and all indications that he held up. He admitted in the post game he wish he could have had a few plays back, but was largely happy, especially going up against Aiden Hutchinson for when he did. One of the best pass rushers in the NFL. They're able to keep Pat pretty clean, and they get the win. And I thought the funniest thing, he made a famous quote, kind of a cliche. You don't have to get ready if you stay ready. And then he closed the interview because he had to get back to the hospital. So quite a 24 hours, for 36 hours for Jaylon Moore.
It's Aiden Hutchinson was statistically the best pass rusher in the NFL going into the game. So it's a weird time to suddenly get plugged into action. And he held him to 3 pressures in the game, which is the fewest that he's had since week 1. And I think typically you would think that, okay, that maybe the Chiefs changed their offensive scheme to throw quickly. We've seen them do that a lot, particularly this year and last year. But they had a lot of plays where Patrick Mahomes took a lot of time to throw. I mean, his time to throw was the second highest that it's been this year. So that's a pretty good day for a guy who has literally never started for the Chiefs. And as you mentioned during the game, Blair, he hadn't started since last December. And, I mean, just about a dozen starts in his career now.
This is SportsBeat KC. I'm Blair Kirchhoff here with Chiefs beat writer Pete Sweeney and star columnist Sam McDowell. All right, let's jump into next week's game against the Las Vegas Raiders. I think we should start by not talking about the Raiders, but by the latest addition to the Chiefs. Rashee Rice is going to play in this game, and it's been a long time since we've seen Rashee Rice on the field. By my count, he got injured in the 4th game of the 2024 season, which means he missed the final 13 regular season games, 3 playoff games, and the first 6 games of this year while sitting out his suspension for violating the NFL conduct policy. So it's 22 games since we've seen Rashee Rice. And what's it going to mean for the Chiefs to have him back?
Well, I think building off of Sam's point, the offense looks as good as it has in years without him. And now you add back who is largely looked at in the organization as the most important offensive player that's not named Patrick Mahomes for this year's team, the building for the future, and so on and so forth. And I think you got a glimpse of it last year. I mean, he was on pace in those first 3 games for one of the best wide receiver seasons in the NFL. And I think it was such a blow to them. It was amazing that they were able to go 15-2. But I think even in this initial opening spread for the game, it's reflected in that. The Chiefs right now are 12-point favorites, 11.5 at home against the Raiders, who are coming off a decent win against one of the worst teams in the NFL. But still, they were able to dominate and get the win. And I think, to me, that's a Rashee Rice type of spread. And I think they realize, okay, to the odds makers realize, okay, the Chiefs offense looks great, but they could be a top 1 offense now that you add Rashee Rice.
Yeah, to me, it's like a very specific area too. When you look at the Chiefs historically, I mean, especially under Patrick Mahomes, there's the thought that the guy has one of the best arms in the league, which I'm not saying isn't true, but they're really good after the catch. That's where their bread and butter has been since he arrived. In 2019, they led the NFL in yards after catch. 2020, they led the NFL in yards after catch. 21, 22, and 23, they were all top 5 in yards after catch. Then this year, through 3 weeks, they were 21st in the league in yards after catch, and their offense was struggling. Over the last 3 weeks, they've been second in the league in yards after catch. The best receiver in football through 4 weeks last year, and that stat was Rashee Rice. He had 40 more yards after the catch than any other receiver in the league. So, this is the way the Chiefs want to operate. And specifically, we've seen times where their running game has struggled. He's been an extension of the running game to where they just shorten their playbook when he's not in the game. They don't run the bubble screens to anybody else. We see them plug and play a lot. They don't plug and play for the stuff that Rashee Rice does.
So in the preseason opener last year at Jacksonville, the starting wide receivers were Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, and Hollywood Brown. That lasted, help me remember how many plays that lasted.
One play.
One play.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
play. Hollywood Brown broke his clavicle on the first play.
Weird injury. Yeah.
Totally weird. It's going to be great to see those guys on the field. I expect the Chiefs go to Rice early and maybe often.
I think we all Hollywood Brown an apology, because I think coming into the season, we had all said, well, this will be great for the Chiefs when Rashee Rice gets back in week 7. Do we really think Hollywood Brown, who can't seem to play a full season ever, is going to be healthy by then? And the answer is yes. As a matter of fact, Xavier Worthy was the one who missed 2 games, almost 3 games, with his injury. Amazing that he's back, but finally seems, knock on wood, the stars have aligned. Looking at you, Indianapolis, where you had 2 practice injuries before the game the other night. Fingers crossed everything goes well in practice for them this week, and you finally get to see the blueprint, this trio that is supposed to really unlock Patrick Mahomes, which already seems to be happening. So again, I think that's why you see the Chiefs looked at as such a favorite in this game.
I don't know what this means for other wide receivers like Juju Smith-Schuster, but I suspect he'll go into the handshake line after the game fully with his radar on. He's not gonna get sucker punched again.
I will say, like, when you go back and watch, throughout the game, I could understand why Brian Branch was not happy. That all was clearly not the accurate, reaction to it, but, there was the offsides penalty on Detroit where none of us really knew whether or not the play counted with Patrick Mahomes' touchdown because the ref never signaled a touchdown, but they announced it as that. He kinda flicks the ball towards Branch and then points at him before he does his taunt, and then,
Shove it
Juju
back.
yeah, and then, Juju Smith-Schuster, like, blocks him in the back with about 3 minutes left to go, and,
Hard.
decleats him, yeah, on the play. I can totally understand why he was upset and what his interview was that you wrote about in the locker room. Doesn't at all mean that that was the appropriate reaction.
I think this is a sign that the vintage Chiefs are back. I mean, this is what you used to see when a good team would get beat down, just extreme frustration from guy. I know Branch is a little bit different, but teams, maybe I should say, that are usually composed. And I imagine they came to Arrowhead thinking that the game would go much differently, and that played into it as well.
A great conversation as always with Pete Sweeney and Sam McDowell. Sam's going to hang out a little longer and discuss the latest on what's going on with the stadium plans for the Chiefs and Royals after this. We're back on SportsBeat KC. I'm Blair Kirchhoff. Sam McDowell, the Chiefs made some news last week by being more detailed on their future stadium options, with Populous providing new concepts for renovated Arrowhead, and they've entered a request for qualification. I'd never heard that before, with a Denver company for a new dome stadium in Kansas. What do we make of these developments?
Well, I mean, it's just falls in line with what the Chiefs have publicly said for a long time now, which is they're gonna see both of these options in Kansas and Missouri to the finish line, and look, it's strategically sound, I think more so than, like, revealing of their hand because it keeps both sides in the game. It keeps both sides, wanting, to do everything they can to please both of these teams, and so, I mean, people in Kansas and people in Missouri both still think they have a shot, and that's exactly what the Chiefs want, is for both sides to still think they have a shot.
Until you had a conversation with Mark Donovan, you and other reporters in Jacksonville
Yeah.
last week. Um, what was he trying to get across? What was his message to you guys?
Well, I think just that is that, they are, these paths are still running parallel. I think the Chiefs' fear is any sort of news like them, seeking architects for a new stadium in Kansas is going to have this reaction that, okay, they're moving to Kansas, or that Populous send them new renovations can say, okay, they're staying at Arrowhead. They want the public message to be that they are looking at both. And I will say, to some outside sources, and then also sources in the organization have told me like they generally don't know what they're going to do yet. And I think that's convenient for them for all the reasons that I've said. But I also I think you look. I mean, the stuff in Jackson County has a lot to play here too.
And that stuff in Jackson County is Frank White got voted out of his position as the Jackson County executive, and Kay Barnes is in as the temporary executive. That's only going to last for.
Well, Phil Lavoda just last night got. He's going to be the interim for the remainder of Frank White's term, which runs through about a year from now.
And he's on record, isn't he, for his preferences for the stadiums?
Yeah, I mean, he wants both teams to stay, but, I don't know. I mean, I think that remains to be seen exactly how that's gonna play out. I think the Chiefs are curious exactly how that's gonna play out. I mean, I until you get behind closed doors and have those conversations, I don't think you really know. I mean, Frank White consistently said publicly he wanted both teams to stay, but it just had to be fair to the county. In our story today in the Star, I saw a quote to me that resembled a similar sentiment, but I do anticipate that he'll probably be, more on board than I think Frank White was, just because I think more people will be on board with Frank White. But look, I mean, in the end, Frank White got recalled, but The one issue recently that the voters agreed with him was the stadium. Like, he did not get the same sort of pushback on that he did several other topics over his tenure. So I still think, I mean, this is going to have to go to a vote. So whatever happens with your negotiations with the legislature, with the county executive, you still have to do something on the ballot that voters appreciate. And in the end, whatever happened with Frank White, the two teams got an issue on the ballot. They got a measure on the ballot, and it was the voters who turned them down.
Well, the next ballot has to come in. It's too late for this year. It's going to be in 2026, which
Yeah.
pushes back the timeline even further. Maybe that's our fault in the media. If we keep demanding timelines and asking for timelines, we get, by summer, by the end of the year, it's really going to come down to a vote.
Yeah, I mean, it would be mid-January, before their deadline basically would be to have the ballot language approved, and so that's I think it's like January 24th or something of that to be on the April ballot. I mean, I think they're more likely to push it back further than they are to move that up. But if they go to Kansas, even though that sales that the Star Bonds extension was a full year, it's been made clear to them that they need to have their minds made up by December 31st. So, like, those to me are the two deadlines that we should operate within, because the Chiefs have been very clear that they're not operating under a deadline. It's more of what you said, which is a timeline. But those are two deadlines that to me are approaching that's where I look. You're going to have a decision by then.
Well, then this is a good place to offer our regular reminder that the leases expire at the Truman Sports Complex in 2031. That's February of 2031.
Yeah.
So not including the 31 baseball or football seasons, time is running out.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, when we went through this last time before the vote, we had estimated probably 5 years to build a new stadium. And so here we are at the end of 2025, and you're going to have, that leaves just 5 seasons left on this lease for the Chiefs, that including the playoffs, like you mentioned. I mean, that's why it's the month that it expires, that it does, which has always been kind of funny to me, because when you wrote up this lease, a generation ago, I don't know who thought, well, what if the Chiefs are playing in the AFC Championship back then? But somehow it does seem applicable now that the Chiefs actually could be playing football in January at home. But yeah, I mean, you're right. When you work backwards from that, which to me was always the part of Frank White's pushback that I didn't understand as much, saying, well, it's too early. I don't know why you'd ever punish somebody for working on something early. But now it's not early. Like, it's getting late to where you've got to make up these decisions, or I think they have some options to extend their lease, but it's like 5-year options. And I don't know that either of these teams, without getting the revenue, are going to be wanting to stay in a venue for an extra 5 years.
Great stuff from Sam McDowell. Thanks, Sam. And before we go, here's what's on my radar in Kansas City sports this week. Oh, so close for the Missouri Tigers. They played Alabama to the final minutes at a supercharged Faurot Field on Saturday, but fell 27-24. In the end, too many mistakes did in the Tigers. I heard griping from some fans along the lines of, same old Mizzou, can't beat a powerhouse opponent. But Missouri is close, and they'll have more opportunities against high-profile teams this season. This team is good enough to be in the college football playoff bracket, but they can't slip up at Auburn on Saturday. Kickoff is 6:45 p.m. and the game is on the SEC network. Kansas and Kansas State are off this weekend, helping build the tension for their showdown in Lawrence the following week. The Garmin Kansas City Marathon is almost here. The city's largest foot race starts in the early morning on Saturday. The marathon course stretches north to south from 6th Street to 74th Street and east to west from the Paseo to Ward Parkway. Thousands of runners will descend on downtown for the full and half marathons, 10K and 5K races. Hope the weather holds up for the pavement pounders. If you're driving downtown Saturday morning, you might want to check the routes to avoid delays. Well, that'll do it for this week. Thanks to our staff, Randy Mason, Monty Davis, Irvin Zhang, Suzanne Hogan, and Gabriella Lacey, and to our editors, Jeff Rosen and Scott Chasen. We'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City.